Hey y'all, today is April 19th and we are doing a little mini lesson on 8-5, the circumference of a circle. So the first thing I want you to know is the definition of this word circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle. So think of it as the perimeter of the circle, the outside distance, okay? Now we're gonna use the same formula every time we find the circumference. And the circumference formula is circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius of a circle. Now, every time you see this symbol for pi, I want you to know that we're always going to use 3.14. So pi is a never-ending decimal. It keeps going on, but we are always going to approximate it to 3.14. Okay? So now that we've talked about the formula, and remember, it's circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, we're ready to get started with some examples. Now, I also want to go over some just circle vocab real fast. So if I draw a circle right here, so if I go from the outside edge to the center, and we're going to pretend like that is perfectly the center. I don't know if it is or isn't. That right there is the radius. So sometimes on our circles, you will see a line going from the outside edge to the center, or from the center to the outside edge. That line is the radius. However, sometimes we will see circles. I'm going to see if I can draw another good circle here. Let's see. That looks pretty good. Where we see a line going all the way across. So it goes even through the center and extends to the other side. Okay, so that line is called the diameter. It goes all the way across the circle. Okay, so what I want you to know is that the diameter is 2 times the radius. The diameter is 2 times the radius. It's twice as long as the radius. Now the radius, you could say, is half as long as the diameter. So 1/2 times d, or d divided by 2. That's how you can find the radius. Okay, but for our circumference problems, we are always going to use the formula c equals 2 times pi times r, which is the radius. So we always want to find this value right here. Okay, so now that we've talked about that vocab, let's get started with some examples. So number 1 right here, I have a circle and I see that my line goes all the way across, so that's my diameter. And my diameter is 12 meters. So my radius is going to be half of that. So 12 divided by 2 is 6 meters. So that's what I'm going to use in my formula, okay? So I know that circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. So circumference is 2 times 3.14 times my radius of 6. So now I'm going to put this into my calculator. And I'm going to go to my Desmos calculator. So I'm going to kind of be back and forth a little bit here. So we have 2 times 3.14 times my radius of 6. And I get 37.68. So that's my answer. 37.68. And I always want to include my units, which is meters. So 37.68 meters is the circumference. Okay, let's move on to number 2. So again, I have a circle with a diameter. So I need to know my radius. Well, my radius is half of the diameter. So half of 10 is 5. My radius is 5 kilometers. So remember our formula. Don't really have a whole lot of room here because of all the extra notes I did. It's 2 times pi times the radius. So c equals 2 times 3.14 times 5. So I'm going to put this right here into my calculator, right? So I'm going to go back to Desmos. So we have 2 times 3.14 times my radius of 5. And I get 31.4 as my answer. So the circumference is 31.4 and kilometers is my unit. So that is my answer, 31.4 kilometers. Okay, let's move on to number 3. So again, I've been given the diameter. So to find my radius, I'm just going to divide that by 2. So R equals 7.4 divided by 2. So 7.4 divided by 2, if I put that in my calculator, I get 14.8. Or sorry, I think I just multiplied that by 2. I don't want to multiply it by 2. I want to divide it by 2, right? So let's actually go to my calculator. So we have 7.4, that's our diameter. I'm going to divide that by 2, and I get 3.7, okay? So 3.7. So that is my radius. And that's important to my formula because my formula is circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. So circumference is 2 times 3.14 times 3.7. Well, we're going to now put all of this into my calculator. So keep in mind, I'm multiplying it all together. So 2 times 3.14 times 3.7, and I get 23.236. 23.236 feet is my answer. Okay, let's look at number 4. So this time I have a circle, but notice I was just given the distance from the edge to the center. So that is my radius. So I don't need to now find my diameter. I've got my radius. We're good to go. So our formula is C equals 2 times pi times R. So C equals 2 times 3.14 times my radius of 3. So I'm going to put that into my calculator. Remember, I'm just multiplying all of these numbers right here together. Okay, so let's go back to my calculator. We have 2 times 3.14 times my radius of 3, and I get 18.84. So C equals 18.84, and I always include my unit, yards. Okay, moving on to number 5. Again, I've been given my radius, so that's good. I just can use my formula and plug it in. C equals 2 times pi times the radius. So C equals 2 times 3.14 times 8.6. That's my radius. And now I'm ready to just plug this right here into my calculator. So let's go back to the calculator. 2 times 3.14 times 8.6, and I get 54.008. So my circumference is 54.008 feet. Okay, number 6. So this time I have a little word problem. It says find the distance a wheel with a diameter of 28 centimeters would travel in 1 revolution. So let's actually think about what this looks like. So we have a wheel, it's a circle, right? And it says with a diameter of 28 centimeters. So diameter means it goes all the way across, right? So from one edge to the other, I know it's going to be 28 centimeters, okay? And I want to know how far that distance that wheel would travel in 1 revolution. So I'm just going around it 1 time, right? So I'm just finding the circumference of 1 spin. So just the distance around the circle, right? Well, if I've been given the diameter, how do I find the radius? Well, I know the radius is half of that. So 28 divided by 2 is 14. So my radius is 14. So now that I know the radius, I can easily use my formula. So our formula is C equals 2 times pi times the radius. So C equals 2 times 3.14 times 14. And now I'm just going to plug this right here into my calculator. Remember, I'm multiplying it all together. So we go back to our calculator. 2 times 3.14 times 14. And I get 87.92. So that right there is my answer. C C equals 87.92, and it's centimeters. Don't forget your units. Okay, number 7. Regina is tying a bow around a soccer ball to give to her sister. The ball has a radius of 4.5 inches. The ribbon needs to be 10 inches longer than the circumference of the ball, so she has enough room to tie a bow. How many inches of ribbon does she need? Okay, so first I need to find the circumference. So we're going to use our formula, C equals 2 times pi times the radius, right? And it tells me that the ball has a radius of 4.5 inches. So for R, I'm going to use 4.5. So C equals 2 times 3.14 times 4.5. So I'm going to plug that into my calculator to see what I get. So 2 times 3.14 times 4.5. I notice I get 28.26 for my circumference. So I'm going to go back over here and write that down. C equals 28.26, and I know it's inches, okay? But there's more to the problem because it says the ribbon needs to be 10 inches longer than the circumference, so she has enough room to tie a bow. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add 10 inches. So 28.26 plus 10 equals how many total inches? Well, that would be 38.26 inches. That's how much ribbon she needs in order to tie the bow. Okay, number 8. Ellen has 2 pizzas left after a party. One is whole and one has been half eaten. The whole pizza, sorry, that should have a T right there. The whole pizza has a radius of 7 inches and the half-eaten pizza has a diameter of 20 inches. Which pizza has a greater circumference? Okay, so let's first find the circumference of the whole pizza. Okay, so the whole pizza. So it's a whole circle, right? So what I know is that the whole pizza has a radius of 7 inches. So we're going to use that R equals 7. So C equals 2 times pi times R. So C equals 2 times 3.14 times 7. The radius was 7, right? So I'm going to plug that into my calculator and find the circumference of the whole pizza. So we have 2 times 3.14 times 7, which is 43.96. So the circumference of the whole pizza is 43.96, and let's check my units, inches. Okay, so that's important for us to note, right? Now let's talk about the half-eaten pizza. So a half-eaten pizza, well, it would look like half of a circle, right? It's a semicircle. So I've got to figure out what is the circumference of this one. And I'm going to talk about this in just a minute, but basically I'm going to take my circumference and I'm going to divide it by 2, but I've got to add the diameter. So I've got to find this part right here, half of the outside edge, but I've got to add the diameter back, right? So what we know is that the half-eaten pizza has a diameter of 20 inches. So if this whole side is 20, well, what is the radius? So if the diameter is 20, the radius is half of that, so the radius is 10. Okay? So the circumference is half of this 2 times pi times R formula, right? So C equals 1/2 times 2 times 3.14 times our radius of 10. Okay? Are y'all following? So I'm going to put all of that into my calculator. And instead of me typing half like that, I'm going to use 0.5. So we have 0.5 times 2 times 3.14 times our radius, which was 10. Okay, so I get 31.4. Now we're not yet done. So C equals 31.4. Now keep in mind, that's just this part right here. I have to now add this part here. So I'm going to add that 20 diameter back. So 31.4 plus 20 equals 51.4, and it would also be inches. Okay, so now we've got our two circumferences. The whole pizza is 43.96 inches, and the half-eaten pizza is 51.4 inches. Which one has a greater circumference? It's the half-eaten pizza. That's the one that has the greater circumference. Okay, let's move on to our last problem. Can you close that door for me? Okay, so here we've got another semicircle problem. So I see that we've got a semicircle with a radius of 10 inches. And I want you to remember that a semicircle is just half of a circle. So the way that we find the circumference is first we find half of the circumference. So we're using our formula, C equals 2 times pi times the radius, but we're multiplying that by 1/2, or we're dividing that by 2, okay? And then we're gonna add the diameter back. So let's find the circumference, or the distance around the edge of this one right here in number 9. So let's first start with C equals 2 times pi times r. Okay, now I know I'm just finding half of that, so I'm actually going to multiply that times 1/2. Okay, so we have C equals 1/2 times 2 times 3.14 times what is my radius? Well, it's 10. Okay, now I'm going to put that into my calculator. So keep in mind, I'm multiplying all of this together. And instead of me typing that fraction in my calculator, I'm just going to use 0.5. So we have 0.5 times 2 times 3.14 times our radius. Oops, I think I just did 2 multiply. Times our radius, which was 10. So I get 31.4. So I end up with 31.4, right? Now I'm not done because step 2 says to add the diameter. So I'm going to add this distance back in. Well, if this side over here is 10, what is this side over here? It's also 10. So my diameter is 20. So I'm going to add 20 to that. 31.4 plus 20 is going to give me my total perimeter, or my total distance around the semicircle. So that's going to be 51.4, and it should be inches. And I didn't realize that this one would be exactly the same as the pizza problem, but now you have a better understanding of how to find the circumference of a semicircle. That is the end of this mini lesson. Y'all have a good day.